Good evening. It's 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, and this special meeting of the Sandpoint City Council is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I'm Mayor Jeremy Grimm presiding. Also present are Council President Deb Rule, Councilors Justin Dick, Kyle Schreiber, Pam Duquette, and Rick Howarth. Councilman Joel Espiro is absent. Under the city's adopted code of ethics and civility, as the presiding officer, I'm to identify law enforcement personnel serving as Sergeant of Arms for this evening's meeting. Tonight, we have Police Chief Corey Kuhn in the back of the room. If everyone please stand, we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This special meeting was originally proposed for the purpose of holding a workshop for discussion and clarification on roles and responsibilities, which we will be taking up shortly. During our meeting on July 9th, Council postponed to July 30th the decision on tentative approval of the proposed fiscal year 2026 revenue and expenditures, intent to use foregone levying authority, and the scheduling of the annual budget public hearing. Therefore, decisions surrounding the approval of the preliminary budget are also on this evening's agenda. The annual review of city fees and scheduling of a public hearing to take testimony prior to council's decision on the approved proposed new fees and existing fees proposed to increase by more than 5% has also been included on this agenda. As noted on the agenda, council may consider a decision this evening regarding those fees that are proposed to decrease or increase 5% or less. On Monday, the agenda was amended also to add an executive session. Because that amendment was made at least 48 hours prior to the meeting, the agenda was considered amended at the time of posting, and no additional action is necessary for that amendment. Before we get started with those items, I'll first entertain a motion to approve the minutes from Council's July 16th, 2025 meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Duquette, second by Dick. This will be a roll call vote.
Councillor Dick?
Yes.
Councillor Rule?
Yes.
Councillor Duquette?
Yes.
Councillor Schreiber?
Yes.
Councillor Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now move on to our organizational overview and roles and responsibility workshop being led to our attorneys, Zach and Fonda from Lake City Law. Thanks, guys.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. There we go. I just want to begin by explaining that I do have a brief PowerPoint, but all I did try to do was incorporate what's in the memorandum into the PowerPoint. So hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to read the memorandum. Our goal was to provide an objective legal analysis of the roles and responsibilities of the City Council and how they interact with the mayor and those roles. I want to encourage dialogue because everybody's had an opportunity to review this memorandum. I invite questions. I want everyone to have dialogue and hopefully have some constructive discourse on kind of what's going on here. So if we could just move to the first slide. So the first thing that I wanted to point out is just the general separation of powers. That the city government has the same separation of powers as the state and federal governments. I'm sure that, I don't know if anybody was wondering about the judiciary, but the judicial branch is the same. So that is the third branch, and they can oversee city decisions as well. So that still goes to the judges. So what we're really talking about today is the mayor and city council. If we could move to the next slide. The mayor's authority is derived by the Constitution and, of course, the Idaho Code, primarily in Idaho Code 5601. In a nutshell, the mayor's authority is the executive and administrative overview and oversight of the city. There is some overlap, so the mayor does have some legislative authority. Of course, they can veto city council decisions, and they have some authority through a tie-breaking vote. And that's one way that there's some overlap and oversight between the mayor and council. We can move to the next slide. Similarly, the city council's legislative authority is outlined in the following chapter in the Idaho Code. And similarly, there's some overlap where the city council has some administrative authority, namely through the budget, through the overseeing of appointment of certain officials, and then they can also prescribe rules for the mayor and appointed officials, and they can prescribe those duties as well. So that's the city council's authority. I'm happy to entertain questions. Otherwise, I'll just kind of march forward. Next slide, please. This just goes on to the checks and balances. I outlined them in the memo and sort of just discuss them here with the overlap. Does anybody have any questions on the checks and balances?
Is that this slide here?
Yes. So, for example, the mayor's veto power would be a check.
And so impractical or inconsistent legislation, is that subjective or objective?
I would say that's probably subjective,
Right.
But it would depend on the actual legislation. As far as the mayor's check on that, I mean, if the mayor's going to have to implement the legislation, you're going to want the mayor's input
Right.
on whether or not it's impractical to implement. And so that would be an example of why you would want to work with the mayor when enacting legislation.
Thank you.
This is just another check and balance. Moving on to the role of the interaction with mayor, council, and city staff. The shared appointment authority is another significant check. So the mayor makes the nominations to council almost like a judge in the federal system. Council approves that appointment or rejects that appointment, in which case the mayor brings another appointment. And that can just go in perpetuity until the mayor doesn't bring an appointment within, I think it's 10 days off the top of my head, in which case council can nominate someone. I mean, that's kind of a little bit ridiculous. The outcome you'd want is the mayor and council working together to agree on someone on those appointments. But it's not a rubber stamp on the part of council. Those appointments are very significant. That's a very significant authority on the part of the council to approve the mayor's nominations. The Idaho code requires a clerk, a treasurer, and an attorney, and then anyone else that the council decides to make an appointed officer. And the city of Sandpoint has appointed or codified that the police chief, fire chief, public works director, community planning director, community development director, and central services director are the other appointed officers. Next slide, please. So the city council is in control of the budget, as we're well aware. We're dealing with that tonight. The budgetary authority is probably the single most effective check on the mayor's authority, and vice versa in a way, because the mayor needs to be able to work with council and say, this is not going to work to implement, kind of like you were saying, Councilor Duquette. And so, but it is council's prerogative to prepare and codify or ratify the budget, and it needs to be done under strict timelines and rules, as we're all dealing with right now. But the budgetary authority is the probably the most significant check that council has. Any questions about that? Okay, next slide, please. So one unique thing about city government, unlike state and federal government, is of course that the city staff is working for both the legislative branch and the administrative or executive branch. And so I think it's important to note that the mayor has the operational and managerial authority over the city staff. However, city staff does still work with city council, particularly the appointed directors. The city council can prescribe the rules and the roles and responsibilities of the appointed directors. And that's one way that city council can control how and what those roles and responsibilities are. Another way is, of course, the budget. It's very important that the directors in particular, but that the city council members have access to staff for information in the legislative process. However, as I hope you're all aware, a single city council member can't direct a staff member to do anything at all. They can ask questions, they can ask for information, but at the end of the day, the only time that the city council has any actual authority is at a public meeting with a vote, with a formal vote of a majority of the council members present. Any questions on that? Next slide, please. I think I kind of
Zach,
just
I'm
got ahead of
sorry.
myself. Yes.
Um, so can we go back there? So can you just clarify that in the process of information gathering for city council, that the city council members have authority to do such?
Absolutely. So the city
For making
council members,
legislative and budgetary decisions?
the city council members need to be able to gather information from staff. And so, yes, the city council members have authority to ask questions, gather information. I mean, frankly, it's all public record anyway. So if they really wanted to, they could make a public records request. That would be an obnoxious and cumbersome way to do it. So yes, the city council members have authority to gather information from staff, particularly when it comes to legislative decision-making.
Zach, can I ask a question? Can you maybe elaborate when it says mayor exercises managerial and operational oversight? I know what those terms mean and I understand it. Are there any boundaries, anything that would fall outside of managerial operational oversight that we should be aware of?
Yes. So first and foremost, anything that's outlined in state code. And then if you looked at the memo, Dillon's rule is what provides the mayor and council's authority. And then there's case law on that. And so, and the case law is pretty informative and it really does boil down to expressly granted powers or implied from those granted powers. But for example, in 1909 or maybe 1920, a mayor tried to hire private investigators to enforce liquor laws this must have been in 1919 during the Prohibition. And council actually tried to ratify after the fact, the mayor's decision to hire those. And then there was an injunction filed to, and I'm nerding out on the actual facts of the case, I'm sorry, but in a nutshell, yes, there are checks and balances. And so the mayor's operational oversight is limited to specifically what's provided in the statute. And then if it comes down to a specific question, then you would go to case law to determine whether or not it fits with this specific question.
Thank you.
Next slide.
Zach, I just have a follow-up, just for some discussion. So, whoever's the mayor obviously has comprehensive understanding of all the hot button issues and pressures and deadlines and needs of the city. So in a situation where, as the supervising authority of department heads, there were a real critical issue. And an individual council member, says the day of a council meeting, wanted information on a subject, maybe 2 days before. But there was a higher pressing need of that resource, of that department head, as determined by the mayor. Does the mayor have the ability to say, give a 5-minute response, but I really need you on this task? This is the critical priority of the city. I guess the question is, how would you recommend the determination of how much time a department head allocate to a request of an individual council member?
So that's going to be, I guess, that's kind of a fact-specific question, and my lawyer's answer is going to be it depends on the specific situation and circumstances. However, in answer to your question, kind of at the end, how much time should a director or staff member allocate to an individual council member? I think that should be up to the discretion of the director or council member. I mean, if they feel like they can do their job and satisfy both the mayor's needs and the answer and provide information to the individual council member without being overstretched, then I think that the director should have the authority to do that. In a slightly different situation where it sounds like at the beginning of your question when you were saying, something's on fire and something needs to be done, that would be the fact-specific question where if the mayor says, this is on fire and it needs to be done right now, maybe answer the individual council member's question later. I think that the mayor would have the authority to do that. Again, very fact-specific instance, and I think that the individual directors would need to have a little bit of discretion on whether or not they're being stretched too thin to provide answers to both.
Yeah, and council, I just bring that up, being in the unique position of being an appointed department head. It's interesting because our department heads back there, majority of you or three of you plus myself could remove one of these appointed officials. And to some degree, you certainly don't want to make enemies by not responding to a request for information from a council member. So imagine a situation where 4 or 5 of you are all asking for information. It just puts the department heads in a challenging position to serve 2 or sometimes 7 masters. So I don't think, barring one incident that I can think of, and I was recently reminded of, there's been an issue. I think free flow of information is wonderful. And I do know that Mayor Miller, at a time, there was a council member who was really putting a lot of pressure on department heads for explicit information that would have caused you to lose a half a day of work to respond. So I think it's not an issue right now. It seems to be pretty balanced. I think for the most part, you would agree you get the information that you need, and there's a good flow of information. So my perspective is until there is a significant issue or problem, or it's perceived as a real constraint, that it's working pretty well. And I just ask you to respect the department head's time and understand that there are 6 of you, and that there are times when they may not be able to provide a full analysis or all the detail you desire.
Mr. Mayor, may I just add a comment? In that case where there is this conflict, in many respects, it then falls back on the department heads to be communicating with us very clearly about these constraints and trying to sort through that constraint with the council members to go say, hey, I've got these things. How urgent is your request? I can give you a little bit of information right now. If you need a lot, it's going to take more time than I've got available. And so, and it really comes down to this slide here that talks about communication, which is the essence of keeping all of this working. It really falls upon that line of communication. And so I would hope that they feel authorized to come back to us as counselors and say, hey, I've got other priorities right now. Help me understand what you need and work it that way without you ever having to be in the middle of it. Because once you get in the middle of it, then I think this idea of communication is breaking down.
Thank you.
And likewise, we need to be understanding that they do have multiple, could have multiple things on their plate at the same time. So again, I think that's, to me, as I think about this, that's going to be the secret of what makes this all work, is the communication both from us to them and them to us.
Yeah.
May I just make a comment?
Please, it's a workshop. You can do that.
Whenever I ask for help, it's when you have time, if you have a minute. And I have always been afforded, come in, call me. I've never had an issue but I do need to learn a lot. I think I take up most of Sarah's time more than anybody's, but it's always been very graciously given.
I think it's been working well, and it's time well invested. I do have a quick follow-up, Zach and Fonda. In your opinion, is it appropriate for the mayor to request copies of communications that are provided to council members?
I think any written communication, the mayor, it's appropriate for him to request copies of those, yes. Should the mayor mandate to be included on all correspondences? I mean, I think that might be a little bit of overreach, but the mayor probably could. I don't think what the mayor could do is inhibit communication, especially in-person or telephonic communication between council members and staff members. I'll loop back to my previous comment. It's all public record, right? So if the mayor, this would be a ridiculous outcome, but the mayor could file a public records request for all correspondences between council and directors and,
Melissa's like, no.
I mean, I should.
Or simply,
My point is,
or simply go to their IT staff and say, please pull all emails from.
yeah, I mean, my
XYZ."
point is,
Yeah.
yes, the mayor has access to that information. So.
Thanks.
You have another question. So if memory serves me correctly, we created a new org chart and I don't know if it's accurate.
I believe it's in the front page of the budget book.
Okay. All right, I'll go
What's
back
your-
and look
what's your
at that.
concern?
It did not, from my, I haven't looked at the one in the budget book, because I was looking at the budget numbers. But my recollection is that there was not a direct connection to the directors from the council.
You're just wanting to make sure that the org chart.
Or is
reflects-
correct per what we're discussing this evening. So if we can go back and check that. I know I brought that something up similar once before but I maybe believe it was relative to council and legal. So if we can just double check that and make sure that what we learned tonight is reflected in the org chart, that would be appreciated.
And for just clarification, President Rule, you believe that there should be a direct line from council to department heads?
I think that's what we just all discussed and is in this PowerPoint.
At a minimum, council could codify that.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's certainly council's prerogative.
I mean, no, as your memo states, we don't direct them, but we have access to them specifically to gather information for budgetary, legislative, I believe you wrote planning decisions, quasi-judicial, et cetera, so on and so forth. So we have to have a direct line of communication to those people to get that data. I mean, most of the time it's presented to us, but if we have additional questions, then as we've always been told, please go to the directors, get your questions answered before you come to the dais so they're not caught off guard, et cetera, so on and so forth. And so I'm understanding that, no, we don't tell them how to mow the lawns or when they can have their lunch breaks or any of that sort of stuff. But we do have that direct access to gather our information to make informed legislative decisions.
So I think the org chart is designed to reflect your hierarchical structure, which means management and oversight of daily operations. So how about a hashed line? And the hashed line would mean flow of communication, but not necessarily performance reviews, daily workflow, priority of projects, the things that are included in their daily job function, but kind of a modified version of that flow of communication.
I think that would be appropriate because I think a lot of people are visual learners and also it's more concrete in that way.
The other, may I? Yeah, just jump right in.
Mhm.
The other thing for you to discuss this evening, as this conversation has been working its way through the process, and the reason that it came to a head, I believe, is because in the absence of a city administrator, the responsibilities of the city administrator position either had to dissipate across your directors or be centralized in a different position, which could be the mayor's position. And so the discussion tonight also, I think, needs to include where you want to see the dissipation of those previous responsibilities and or whether or not you think that's already happened and it's correct, because that also leads into your follow-up conversation about your expectations of the mayor and the mayor's role. Not Jeremy, remember, we're not talking about this specific mayor, but the mayor's seat in general. So I think this is the time and place for you also to discuss what your expectations are of the mayor's role. Are the previous responsibilities of your city administrator properly being administered across your department heads and or with Jeremy, or do you want to see something different?
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Okay,
Councilor Dick.
I'm gonna jump in and please, if I start veering off, will you let me know and we can have I can put that into a more detailed conversation?
Well, for clarification for the public, because this is recorded, I think what you're referencing is that we need to keep this in general terms, position related. If you veer off into anything personnel that we would call a recess, it would be appropriate at that point to go into executive session for anything, any discussion related to a specific person
Sure.
in a position.
Okay, thank you. I guess what would be helpful, and I'll kind of give you my thought process behind a lot of this, and for future councils and for future mayors, as we've moved from one administration to having a city administrator to having a mayor city council where we now have a part-time mayor. How do this is, are we still? It's a part-time mayor position, right? So when we're looking through just the cities of Idaho that are full service, and by full service, we're talking fire and police, wastewater management, water utility, planning and zoning, parks and rec. Have I missed anything for, what was that?
Streets.
And streets, right? So of those cities, or of the full service cities, Ammon, Twin Falls, McCall, Coeur d'Alene, Driggs, Mackey, and Salmon all have city administrators. Those that don't, that are also full service, that have a full-time mayor, you've got Boise, Idaho Falls, Pocatello, Blackfoot, Chubbuck, Rexburg. My concern as we move forward, we're not always going to get the opportunity to get a mayor like Mr. Grimm, who has had plenty of experience in the public sector and the private sector. At some point, having a mayor is going to be a popularity contest. Being that it is a part-time position and we have a $50 million budget on a full-service city, which may allow 1 to 2 days of a part-time mayor actually being there. I am concerned in terms of who is in charge when the mayor is not there among the department heads, or if that is a specific position. How much falls back on the council shoulders, and what type of cases, and you can answer these one by one or step in if you need to. In what type of cases, if the mayor is not working and the directors cannot make an executive decision, what would prompt that decision being sent over to the president of the city council? I think that would be a big one. Is there any way to determine a criteria of what a part-time mayor's schedule may look like in terms of hours or what days of the week that they're in? And I bring that up because I would think of part-time as 20 hours. I don't know if there's anything statute or code that says how many hours. It's just an obligation of the mayoral duties. Is that correct?
There's nothing in code.
Right, in
defining
terms of what part-time would be
Okay.
for a mayor as well. I think there's an opportunity for a failure of success depending on, like I look at Fridays. And Fridays is a day that I would want to be there if I was the mayor and all the staff going into the weekend when the city shut down. And most of the department heads are going to be gone one way or another. Is there a way that council at some point in time, either down the road or now, has some opportunity to work on those criteria with the mayor in terms of what he or she's responsibilities are for their actual office hours, setting up their first, second, third in command, who the public information officer is. Those are just kind of the thoughts on the top of my head here. But I think ultimately where I'm going with this is we either have a full-time mayor or we have a city administrator. That's kind of where I see it right now. I think there is an opportunity. Mr. Mayor, I do hear you. If there are problems that come, which so far I have not seen, I would tend to let the system play out. But I am fearful if we don't put some checks, not checks and balances, but if we don't put a few things in place, that we have the ability for failures down the line moving forward.
Thank you, Councilman Dick.
Sorry, that's a lot.
No. I think it's great. And obviously I want Zach and Fonda to weigh in. Again, having worked under Ray, Gretchen, Marcia, Carrie, so 4 mayors under the department head structure, I'll say 2 things. One, on these wonderful phones, there's the VIP setting. So only your VIPs ring at night when you're asleep and the phone's next to your bed. That includes my parents, my wife, my son, etc. It also includes all the department heads. So I think anyone sitting in this seat, if any one of those department heads call me, I answer the phone, whatever's happening. And I can't think of a time when someone's called that phone, my personal phone, and I haven't answered. So the mayor's kind of always on. But having worked under those other mayors under this structure as a department head, these department heads function day to day and own and are responsible and accountable for their fields of expertise, whether it's a zoning file or a public works emergency or a financial emergency or health, safety, police. So those department heads are very capable and, all call me if there's anything happening that's of consequence. So in that respect, I think there is a pretty good fail-safe. I think the council could improve, we could set up protocols in terms of updates and responses to full council for incidences and other things to improve your awareness of elements that are happening. And in terms of hours in the seat, I think it's, completely appropriate to say, part-time mayor is expected to be in the mayor's office X amount of hours a week. But it's a pretty rare circumstance when, I'm unreachable. There was one last week where I didn't have cell service, maybe once a year or twice a year at the most. But generally, there's some pretty good safeguards and backstops there.
Okay. I appreciate that. And I think one thing, I really do appreciate where you're going with that, and I completely understand where you're at. Understand the cell phone being to pick it up at a moment's notice, and the job is 24/7. However, in the absence of a mayor for 1 to 2 days, and I can tell you this from my own personal experience at my businesses, if I am out, executive decisions either don't get made or they get made, and sometimes they do it because they don't want to call me, right? They don't want to bother me with something that happens. The other thing that happens is in the vacuum, who steps up to take the power while I am not around, or potentially a mayor is not, or a department head is not around, isn't necessarily the best person, right? Or the most qualified person. It might be the loudest person. It could be the pushiest person, right? And in doing so, also might not want to get yourself or a future mayor involved in whatever might be going on, or shielding coworker interactions, right, that may go down, or interactions that don't go well with the public that may happen on the property, so that our mayor may be the last person to find out about it after the stuff has already hit the fan.
Yeah, no, those are all very real hazards. I'll tell you right now, in terms of executive functioning and decision-making, these folks sitting here make those decisions every day. See myself more as a support. And then the broader visioning, knowing what all the moving pieces are doing. If planning has an issue with the development with legal, making sure that public works is engaged, which they probably are. But these folks are making most of those decisions unless it's something super serious. You know, and then Fonda or Corey or Gavin or Holly are calling me or Sarah directly. But they do have that. And I guess I just want to bring it back to a question. I think some of this arose. There was a proposed ordinance I put on to change some allocation of some of the funds in one of the funds in the city. Um, and what I wanted to avoid is, what I wanted to achieve was to be able to give my oral presentation on why I thought this ordinance was a positive thing, and have the council hear my pitch, so to speak. And hypothetically, a council member who saw that on an agenda could have asked someone to do an analysis as an individual that could have been distributed to the entire council except for the mayor. Something like that, you know, I think as the administrator, you want to lead, you want to understand everything that's happening, and you want to make sure you're not out in the dark. And you also want to have the opportunity to present your political or administrative goals and priorities as a leader. So that's the only situation that I can imagine that would be challenging under the current format without clarification, is that it takes 4 council members to direct a report or some specific action of a department head. And that's great as far as I'm concerned. If 4 of you think that is the direction you want anything to go, that works great.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Council President Rule.
may I ask Fonda why she's shaking her head?
Well, my concern is that I think this is a great discussion point for all of you. And I'm hoping that when Mr. Mayor's finished, you guys will have some commentary, because really council has the ability to say whether or not, when an agenda item is coming forward, you wish to have information from your department heads, irrespective of whether or not it's an initiative by the mayor. So I think that's a great discussion point.
Yeah, that is, Madam President, if you don't mind, that's a great point, and I guess it comes down to philosophy. I would encourage you all, and if I were on the council, if something came forward to hear a pitch or a perspective from the mayor, and you weren't quite comfortable with it, and you wanted more information or a contrarian view of it's too Pollyanna, that 1 or 3 or 4 of you would say, hey, interesting, but let's do some analysis. Staff, go back and do a pros, cons, cost benefit analysis on the mayor's proposal. Totally appropriate, but what if this hypothetical ordinance comes up and there's 4 council members that support it, or 3 in the mayor? Does staff really need to spend an hour or 3 doing an analysis if the political will is there to pass it? And that's, I think, a question I would encourage all of you to say, hey, if any one of you put something on the agenda that's up for a proposal or potential vote, if you got the 4 votes or 3 in the mayor, I'm not sure how much work needs to be done and out doing an analysis on it. But certainly if there's hesitation or need for more information, I would say table it, ask for direct staff to do a analysis or report on it and bring it back. But to do that work in advance seems like it's potentially inefficient in my mind.
So if I might, that seems to contradict what we've constantly been told, to get our questions answered by staff before items come to the dais.
I hear you, Council President, and I think a question versus, and it comes down to maybe semantics. A question, sure. Questions in my mind are fairly narrow. asking for a more in-depth research or analysis is something a little bit different in my mind. And maybe we differ on that, but that's what you know, let's use a fun hypothetical. I want to make the green apple the official fruit of the city of Sandpoint. And, you know, I'm pretty sure that there's going to be three votes to move that legislation forward. I put it on there just as a ordinance or a resolution. No staff report. I present it. I say, folks, I love green apples. I'd like the green apple to be. There's really no need for an analysis if the votes are there, is what I'm saying. If there's 3 or 4 that determine that's a great idea, why spend hours of staff time developing an analysis of the green apple?
I'm going to interject and say that I don't know that we're developing an analysis as much as if it is a budgetary item. I'm not going to vote on a green apple without data. And so I might have 20 questions that turn into something quite lengthy when the ordinance only comes in front of me as a green apple, because it's not a green apple, it's greenbacks when it's budgetary. And that's what this council is responsible for, is the taxpayers' money. And so you may call it analysis, I may call it answering 20 questions.
Sure.
Well, and I
Appreciate
would also add, there's a balancing act of making sure that you have all the information you need for deliberations. So I'd be cautious with the terminology that we already have 4 votes when we come into the meeting, because you wouldn't know that without deliberations. So I think even your dissent, look at what our Supreme Court does, even the dissent has a right to inform the public of why they're dissenting, and they might need the information in order to provide that during their deliberative comments previous to voting.
Sure. So some obvious solutions. You know, I like the more casual discussion. If council were uncomfortable with something, say I put something on the agenda, table it, ask for more information. We can really glean what you're looking for, what your concerns or pros and cons are, do some good analysis. So that's one way, is just to table it and council direct staff for more information. Alternatively, we could take a more restrictive and I think limiting approach, which would be every single item going on the agenda needs to have a staff report or a sponsor report. We have the one sheet, but that's a pretty casual one sheet. How in-depth that report would need to be, I think, becomes a problem, because people could pick and choose and say, well, it doesn't give me all the information. You did it. So there is a legislative way to ensure that you don't get surprised with simply an ordinance on the agenda. But I'm not sure it would serve us practically, because sometimes you just have time to make an oral presentation and you want to move forward.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman Schreiber.
Yeah, I have a hypothetical question that I think we're kind of dancing around here. So let's say not this council or this mayor, but a council and a mayor disagreed on an item. Maybe even the director in charge of that department disagreed with the mayor on that item, and the mayor was intentionally creating higher priorities. Again, not saying that this has happened, but intentionally, like we said earlier, mayor could say, oh, that's not the highest priority. You don't have time to answer that. What if the mayor was intentionally doing that to prevent people who opposed his viewpoint or her viewpoint from getting the information they need? What is the remedy for the council in that? And then the flip side of that coin is, what's the remedy for a mayor who feels that a council member is wasting staff's time?
So to answer question number 1, if that were to happen, you as a council would see a pattern of behavior and you would address it at the dais. You would have extremely delayed decision-making, because everything absent approving your budget and your consent calendar would end up stayed, delayed, more information, and you just wouldn't make a decision for weeks and weeks on end, and all of your governance would be dramatically slowed down. So that's answer to question number one. Question number two, what was question number two?
The flip side of the coin.
The
So
flip side.
what if you have a counselor or counselors who are, in the mayor's viewpoint, wasting staff's time? What is the mayor's remedy against
Well,
that?
assuming that the mayor's position on the waste of time isn't just being obstructionist, it would be to have a conversation with that council member and maybe outline and educate on what that director's responsibilities are, what their workload looks like, what their day looks like, what their week looks like, and really impose on that council member the difficult position the council member's putting the director in by demanding so much time. I think the mayor absolutely has authority to have that conversation. And go ahead.
I would just like to interject as well that these questions aren't exactly legal questions. They certainly are, and you know, this is in our wheelhouse. But these are policy questions that you can be asking yourselves and be discussing these amongst yourselves, because you have the authority to outline these rules and these prerogatives. And take the Apple, for example, or the ordinance situation. That cuts both ways. So you're going to want to have the ability to have swift legislation. But you're also going to want, and so you're going to want to have the ability to have that presented to council with whatever information is necessary. But if council is always kicking it back, like Fonda was saying, it's not going to be efficient anymore. So you're going to want council to have all of the information at the time the decision should be made. Otherwise, they'll just kick it back and they'll direct staff to provide a staff report. Those are questions for you guys to hash out amongst yourselves, frankly. Like, how do you want to have that presented from a legal standpoint? It's kind of up to council to determine how that's done.
I have a couple of comments, if I may.
Please.
Questions. maybe.
Councilwoman, are you all done, Councilman Trevor, at the moment?
Sorry.
Yeah, I guess the last piece of that puzzle would then be the directors. Is there any protection for them if they are presenting unpopular information?
Well, there's always the employment-related protections for your directors, which are different than the rules that you fall under as electeds. So they absolutely have protections.
Okay. Go ahead.
Councilwoman
I'll
Duquette.
stick with that for a minute. I would appreciate somebody on the council being able to gather information that I may not have thought of, since we can't come to the dais with a consensus between us and it has to be done then. I'm just saying hypothetically that would help me if somebody else asked a question I hadn't thought of. So I would appreciate that happening, and I would appreciate staff's time sharing that, because knowing that the other council member might be able to share that with everybody, it just makes it so that we all wouldn't have to be going and asking the same thing.
Right.
And then as far as the part-time, I also had that question. Is that something council can codify? What a part-time looks like? How many hours is a part-time mayor? That's one. And putting the responsibility on the directors when they're in charge and there may not be a mayor there that day. As far as when they're appointed or hired, if that's shared, what if they are not comfortable with that responsibility? Because they're a department head, they didn't sign on perhaps to be in charge. And if somebody was to be in charge, let's say a mayor could not be reached, there's all kinds of reasons. I don't trust phones. There's all kinds of reasons a mayor may not be reached. Is like the police chief the one that would be, is there somebody else that, Gavin's changed, I didn't say fire chief. I'm just wondering, can somebody be directed who wants to? I'm just thinking if they're not comfortable with that position to be put in that. So those are my questions.
Councilwoman Duquette, those are great questions. I think the first thing to think about is, unlike at the federal level, when you become the executive branch, you get to appoint and choose. I mean, we see that happening in Washington right now. In general, I would think a mayor appointing a department head would make sure that that person is ready for the job, ready to take on that responsibility as is described in their job description. If you look at those job descriptions for any of these people, there is supreme authority given to make decisions.
That's what I'm wondering, because I've not seen.
They are the decision makers, and they come to me when there's challenges or fuzzy areas or just to check in often. So that's the first thing. And then your second question or hypothetical, the police chief steps in when there's a void. Generally, we try to plan things pretty well and know who's on first and who's got coverage. Sometimes the attorneys step in. In the emergency response manual that you're all welcome to come look at, there is a very clear step-by-step, minute-by-minute delegation of duties if there's an incident. So a lot of that we do cover and manage. But I guess I go back, I want to touch on the appointments. I mean, I'll use fruit as an example. I love green apples, right? So I'm probably not going to bring forward an appointment who hates green apples. I'm going to bring forward appointments who share my political philosophy, my perspective, and my general goals and objectives. I mean, which are based off the comp plan and our strategic plan. But to some degree, these department heads, when those appointments become available, are going to be brought up for appointment because they have a lot of synergy with the mayor's philosophy and goals and objectives.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Howarth.
I'd like to maybe make a counterpoint to Councilor Dick's comments. You guys know in my professional life, I worked in a very large corporation. My direct boss was half the way around the world. Our time zones, our times were exactly opposite. When I was up, he was asleep. When I was asleep, he was up. But yet we were highly effective in managing the organization. And it three probably key points. One is hiring the right people to fill those roles, as you've already articulated. These people need to be capable and competent. The second thing that worked was an aligned vision of what you were trying to go do, right? So that my boss knew I was rowing in the same direction as he was. And some people might call that a strategic plan or other types of words. But when you're aligned on that, if there are questions, you're already aligned on what you're trying to go do. And so if you're not there to answer the question, they know that, hey, we're trying to row in this direction. My decisions need to be aligned in that as well. And then the third part is just regular and open and honest communication. If those three components work, in reality, the mayor doesn't even need to be there in reality, other than checking in. And so I have a very different perspective. I don't think we need a full-time mayor. I don't think we need a full-time administrator. In fact, I would argue against it given the financial impacts that had on the city. And it really, we would look back to your leaders, and we ought to, if we don't feel comfortable that they can lead, then we ought to have that conversation as counselors. But quite frankly, I think they're very capable. You know, all of my questions, comments, any directive I've had to them, they answer them very thoroughly with good thought, clarity, and mission. And so that'd be my counter to Councilor Dick. I think it can absolutely work. Communication, the right people in those seats, and the right strategy so that everybody knows what we're trying to go deliver.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilman
Yeah,
Dick.
thank you, Councilor Howarth. I appreciate what you've said, and I believe that many organizations do work like that. But I imagine, number one, your boss was a full-time employee,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
not a part-time, right? And I also agree, there's an aligned vision.
But I would say, well, he was full-time. I did not have full-time access to him.
Sure, but he's still available to yourself or to any member of your crew or
Just-
those working for you and those working around you.
In the same way that the mayor's phone would ring if I called it.
Sure, with the phone, right? But then we get into this aligned vision and it doesn't, we've seen this before and I will do my best. I'm not going to bring up names, but what moves many cities into getting a city administrator is where that vision is aligned between 2 or 3 department heads and maybe not 1 or 2, right? And when we don't have the physical presence of a mayor in the office for however many days a week, 3, 4, whatever that looks like, you may have a department head, as much as we trust the appointment and we voted for the appointment, that goes rogue and takes over, or is, how do we deal with the issues that come from employees that aren't necessarily HR, but become HR over weeks, over months when they're not handled correctly? What happens? What do we do when we have a department head who bullies bosses, talks over, yells and screams in meetings that don't involve the mayor when the mayor's not here, but the rest of the staff or the department heads don't want to make waves, nor do they want to go to HR, so it never gets back to the mayor before it's already a problem.
Yeah, those are great questions, Councilman Dick. And I would say 2 things I touch on. One, during my term as a department head, we did have a department head removed. A second one, there was a petition by one council member to remove me as department head, but I had 4 loyal or supportive council members. And I just say, keep in mind that it just creates, to create that, you just call an executive session, discuss your irks or concerns about an employee, and potentially move for dismissal or other actions. So you do have that power in my mind if you're hearing those things and need to take further action, of course, in consultation with the attorneys and HR specialists.
All right, Mr. Mayor, this will be my last point on this, and I'll let everybody, I think I've spoken enough. Again, I understand the budgetary concerns of either having a city administrator. We went away from that for a reason with the community. It might have been personality-wise, where we still needed the position, but we are where we are. I would prefer that we had a full-time mayor and tried to figure that out in the budget. I don't think we're going to get it in this budget, but I would strive for that moving forward, whoever's up after election, that we move forward to have either a full-time mayor or a city administrator sitting here for the protection of the city for a very long time to come.
Like that. And I'll just throw in there, there are some very real advantages of a city administrator. I don't want to underplay that. One of the examples that I personally witnessed is post-election of the mayor's election, you get a big lag. Unless the council's really following the comp plan and the strategic plan, department heads are following it. I remember on numerous occasions when a new mayor came in and yeah, you continue your projects, but you don't really go after the momentum of where you're going because there's a change in leadership. And to some degree, you're going to be aligned with that leadership. So in those cases, a city administrator does keep that continuity between different elections. But what I love, I know there's always prickly parts. I love the level of engagement that this council has. It's something I haven't seen in many years, at least publicly, asking great questions, having great discussions like this. And I would encourage you to, at least until 2028, continue with what we've built here and continue refining it, making it better. It's not perfect.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schreiber.
I have a somewhat unrelated question, although you just sparked it in my brain as you were speaking. So you mentioned a new administration maybe not pursuing the goals of a previous administration. My question is, obviously a council that controls the budget could choose not to fund something, right? But does a council's decision to fund something create a obligation for the mayor to execute that funding?
I would say to some degree, yes. However, caveat, explanation, or asterisk. So what if the mayor is a bad employee and just doesn't execute what the council asks? You can't really fire the mayor. So it would be, the public, the voters, to say, wow, the council asked him to do X, Y, and Z, and this mayor didn't do any of that. Let's get rid of that mayor. I mean, you could play through, I hope we never get to this point, but I think Fonda and Zach can attest, there are some very contentious cities in Idaho where you can play 4D chess up here if we wanted. Throw Robert's rules in there and motions and tables and all sorts of, crazy stuff, vetoes, and I hope we never get there, but to answer your question, yeah, if the council funds something, it's the mayor's job to do their best effort to facilitate and manage that.
Well, and the specifics are that it's the mayor's responsibility to implement the budget that the council approves.
Thanks.
Guess I have one more
Yeah.
thing to talk about. If a full-time mayor requires an increase in pay, that, and I've said this before, that bothers me, that if, like Counselor Jake says, it's a popularity contest, they have no experience, they're doing it for money, it's not going to work for the city, in my opinion. So I'm not sure how we take care of that, but I could see perhaps somebody thinking, oh, wow, $80,000. I'm just throwing that out there. That's pretty good pay, I think. I'm getting my buddies to vote for me because, and then there you are, you've got that. And so again, I go back to, can we codify what is part-time? What is expected hourly out of a part-time? And I ran with the mayor's idea of doing mayor department heads because I wasn't, I didn't see, I am not experienced in city government, but I did not see that it was working with the city administrator. Again, if we take out the personality, maybe so, but I was willing to give it a try. We've only done a year and a half. We still have time to see, I guess, how that works. If we have an idea of what part-time means, does it mean 1 day a week? That's a great part-time job. I would have taken a part-time job for 1 day a week. But
No,
I'm just saying, I don't know, questions, discussion to have.
In answer to your question,
Uh-huh.
can we prescribe how much time the mayor should be in the office? I hesitate to say yes or no on that, and I would probably, if council really wanted to do that, I'd probably do a deep dive on whether or not you'd put that in an ordinance. What you can't do, and Mayor Grimm announced or mentioned this, you can't really fire the mayor. So even if you do have a rule that the mayor's in the office 20 hours a week or whatever, that's kind of toothless. And so I think from a better perspective, and this is again why you guys are having this conversation, is outline what the mayor's duties are, and you can also outline what the director's duties are, and that's where you have that authority as well. You have the statutory authority to outline the director's duties, and in the absence of the mayor, and certainly not this mayor, in the absence of a mayor implementing the budgetary decisions of council, that those duties would fall on the directors. Unless, of course, you decided to have a city administrator. And my point is, you can outline what that is.
I would also caution you to not be short-sighted on believing that the mayor's only responsibility is administrative and executive, because the mayor's responsible for your community leadership and representation, intergovernmental relations. So the time spent by the mayor isn't necessarily sitting at his desk managing the operations of City Hall. It's also being, involved with other governmental entities around you and statewide. It's economic development. It's meeting with your businesses and your downtown core and being the face of the city publicly. So be mindful when you're thinking about the hours spent by the mayor to remember that probably only a quarter of the time that he spends is going to be, he or she is going to be on operational management.
And I understand that, and without pointing out Mayor Grimm as the mayor, if a mayor says, I'm going to work 1 day a week as part-time, that's really not what's happening if they're doing all of that. So,
Right.
yeah, again, I don't know where that leaves us, but just a comment.
Yeah, and I think that's a great discussion point. And I would also just point out that, like all of you, the mayor is also the head of the water utility, the head of the sewer utility, with all of the stuff that comes with that. Working with the public works director and legal and staff. But it is a little scary, Councilwoman Duquette, in terms of, a salary. I don't know what the commissioners are making now in the county. I think it's close to 90 or more. Yeah, do people run for office for the paycheck? Boy, I guess some may, but I tell you what, most of the mayors I've met do it because they have a sincere and deep passion for their community and want the best for it. So
Yeah,
I
hopefully-
think that's a little scary. I mean, yeah, it's up to the voters if they want to elect someone who seems to not be qualified to do the job.
Seen it happen.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
Well, I think this has been helpful. I'm not sure where they're there, or wherever you want to be or wherever we need to be yet. I would encourage you, if any of you want the job description of the directors, please make those requests. We'll get those to you. You'll see in those job description the accountability, responsibility, and decision-making authority that our directors do have. So I think that might make you feel a little more secure and understanding when there are gaps, what's the fallback. But
I have never thought that they were not qualified. I was just wondering if they're comfortable in that position, should they be left without any direction.
yeah,
I think they're all very highly qualified and they work very well together.
Yep.
But I'm just saying, I would like to make sure that they feel, they know that's there. That might happen, that they might have to make a decision I just want them to be comfortable in their positions.
if there is a future appointment, Councilwoman Duquette, I would recommend you ask that question.
Okay, thank
Of
you.
an
I will.
proposed appointee.
May I, Zach, you scrolled past the slide you had in the PowerPoint there. Oh, no, we were there, and if everybody's done with this part, I just wanted to have a quick overview of what those other two pieces were.
So I think we've kind of touched on this.
Right, yeah.
In great detail. So if you want to move to the next slide.
Right.
This was, my intent was to facilitate and encourage the conversation essentially that's happened. My goal with this slide was just to kind of wrap up and just kind of outline first and foremost that municipal decisions the courts really tend to stay away from really getting into municipal decisions. There's a presumption of validity so long as it's validly passed. Dillon's rule is the It's been adopted by the Supreme Court, which outlines the authority of the mayor and the council, and that's really it with this slide. So I was kind of just trying to wrap up kind of the separation of powers and roles and responsibilities slide. So, but I'm happy to ask or answer any other questions if there are any. Otherwise, I certainly wasn't my intent to just regurgitate what was in the memo. So
I appreciate this. It's condensed. It's something I can understand instead of trying to read the state statutes. Thank you.
certainly.
And council members, many municipalities have council staff. We're not alone in addressing this situation. Some municipalities have shared council staff. So if, for example, Councilwoman Duquette, you want to write an ordinance to protect something, they would go to their council dedicated staff, paid position that would help you research, write a staff report, develop an ordinance to do that. We're obviously pretty small, but there are certainly opportunities, maybe an individual unbiased council member support that could help you achieve your goals as an elected official. But I'd hope we could all work together and that you could build trust in me that if you want to accomplish something, I'm going to try to at least show you how to do it. I might not always agree with what you're trying to accomplish, but I'll walk you through how to get there. Any other council comments, discussions, thoughts on this subject?
Just thank you, Zach and Wanda, for bringing this. I think it was great discussion.
Excellent.
Well, thank you.
All right. We will now move on to item 3, city fees. We'll be reviewing the proposed changes to city fees. Following review, council is asked to schedule a public hearing to consider adoption of new fees and fees proposed to increase more than 5%. With a hearing on these fees mandated by Idaho Code prior to adoption, council is also asked this evening to consider proceeding with approval of the fees that are proposed to decrease or will increase 5% or less. With these minor increases based largely on the annual consumer price index or CPI adjustments, which at the end of 2004 was reflected as 2.9% by the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics, which is the federal agency that determines CPI. So we've kind of got two things: fees that are increasing less than 5% or decreasing, and then the fees that are increasing. So with this, I'll start by yielding the floor to Director Welker for a brief presentation on the fee changes proposed by his department.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
before we start, one of my big questions is, where does the 5% come from?
State code.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council. As I contributed to the staff report from our finance director for tonight's meeting, dawned on me that about 90% of the changes in fees are in my department. So I prepared a short presentation for you. What's not in this presentation, because we literally just went over in our last meeting, is the development impact fees. But I did want to correct, I wanted to point out, Pam, you noticed this today, in the staff report, it contained the statement that we would be rolling those fees out over 3 years. That staff report was prepared before the last meeting. I was away on a work trip last week, so I got all that done before, and I did not have time to go back and correct that. As you all know, you voted to implement those development impact fee increases immediately upon adoption, likely next month. So I am going to go through the other changes in the CPD department, but not the development impact fees tonight. So yeah, we'll get right into it. We're going to actually start with the James E. Russell Sports Center. We are now 2 months into having our new facility supervisor, Ryan Wells. One of the first things I asked of him was to review our fees at the sports center and conduct some outreach to get a better understanding of now, 7 or 8 months in, what does the community prefer in terms of fee structure? And this is what Ryan came up with my support, of course. So I want to just introduce these to you and explain very briefly how it will look starting October 1st, I believe, when we roll these out, if you should choose to adopt them. So we're going away from daily play fees. That's been the number one friction point at the Sports Center. People really don't like queuing up and having to take out cash or swipe their card when they come in to pay that $3 or $5 each time they come in. The overwhelming support is for a frictionless access where you can book your court on your phone, come in, scan your phone, go straight to your court, not have to pay each time. So this is the fee structure that Ryan determined was competitive, very competitive for the region. We're going to start with the monthly memberships. This is for people who choose not to commit to an annual membership. The general public, notice that refers to anybody who's not a county or a city resident. We don't anticipate many general public members to join. This might be the random Canadian who comes down to Sandpoint a few months a year, or somebody from Kootenai County who views $99 as a screaming deal because it is quite competitive for private clubs down in Kootenai and Spokane areas. So we are talking about that standard general public rate of $99 per month, but for county and city residents, we're looking at $69 and $59 per month. This is for that, you want to sign up for 1 month, 2 months at a time, but you may not be willing to commit to a year membership. The annual membership, we're looking at a discount of $20 across the board for people who are willing to commit. The expectation is that if you sign up for an annual membership, you are committing to paying for a year. It will be billed monthly, and we expect automatic renewal for our monthly memberships, much like most membership programs you'd sign up for. And annual memberships do get that significant discount. So just for comparison, currently a city resident monthly membership is $40. So it's about the same if you sign up for an annual membership. The difference is there's no longer that daily play fee. We do expect this to lead to a relatively large uptake in membership at the Sports Center, given the frictionless nature of play. The private court rentals are really not changing from what's in our current fee schedule. We've kind of narrowed it down to 2 user groups. You got the school district and nonprofit tennis and pickleball groups. That would include STA and Panhandle Pickleball Club. Other groups that might want to rent courts for tennis and pickleball use, and then other sports. Now, why are other sports being charged double? The fact is other sports require a whole lot more staff labor to get the courts ready. We have to take tennis nets out to allow for other sports. There's going to be more cleaning of the courts after other sports are used. And oftentimes other sports are going to have much larger numbers of users on each court. A lacrosse practice, which we saw several weeks of last winter, saw around 20 kids per court during those lacrosse practices, whereas a typical tennis group might only use 4 and pickleball might only use 8 per court. 8 per 2 courts, which is 1 tennis court. So any questions on James E. Russell Sports Center fees here?
Mr. Mayor, real quick, Jason, take me through the annual membership here, that it's being billed monthly.
Yep.
So is there like an option online that said we want an annual and I want to be billed monthly?
Correct.
And then is there an opt-out somewhere down the road?
You're entering into a contract at that point.
Okay, so they will be tacked on,
Yeah.
Whatever amount of money is.
You'll be agreeing to pay for the year. Now, one difference is in round 1, when we rolled this out in December last year, the annual membership was pay up front.
Right.
For a lot of people, that $400
Gotcha.
annual commitment was just too much to put into something before they'd had the experience. So this spreads that $400 out over the year, basically, and we bill it monthly. But we can't obviously allow people to get an annual membership and then cancel after 2 months penalty free, because then nobody's going to be choosing the monthly membership option.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead.
if I may, Jason, I always ask who helped Ryan come up with this? Did he survey people coming in? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm always about getting public input.
Yep.
I reached out to a few people that I know that play pickleball and tennis. I only got response from 2 people. I just wanted to give a shout out to Ryan for this, because John, is it Rio?
Rialpo, he's the president of this STA.
He said that he likes it because there's no more nickel and diming, like you were talking about. And he said that he's just very supportive of Ryan, that there's now more incentives and structure. I just wanted to share that.
So speaking of incentives, whether or not we end up partnering with USTA. There has been a subsequent phone conversation, and the director of that group has since a couple months ago, he has relocated to Post Falls. We do have meetings planned in the next week or two. Whether or not we have a partnership with USTA, whether we're running programming or whether USTA runs programming in the future, all members will receive discounts on programming. That's something we already know USTA is open to. So JER members, an incentive of joining is not only do you play for free each time you come, but if you do sign up for a lesson, a clinic, a camp, or a league, you're going to get a discount on that over non-members. Whereas non-members can join something like that, but they're just going to pay a premium price.
One person pays $35 at Ponderay because she's waiting to see how this works.
Yeah.
So I'm
I think there's
just
a lot of
sharing
people,
that
yeah.
could be and we had a good discussion about why county residents pay more, because she didn't agree until we had a discussion. And then she saw that when other sports come, if they're paying, or maybe even the bills, when we get the payables for cleaning fees.
Well, we do the cleaning ourselves. It's just the staff time and the equipment that it takes.
Okay.
to clean.
Okay, so that's not on a payables thing, that your time for cleaning?
No, we
Okay.
don't have, unlike other city buildings, we clean the sports center
Okay,
with,
all right.
with city staff.
I was gonna say, how about they clean
Yeah.
themselves? Okay,
Well,
cool.
the equipment itself is, we have, a $15,000 wet mop in
Okay.
there. We don't want users to use
Okay.
that. Okay, any other
Mr.
questions?
Yeah,
Bill?
Mr. Mayor, real quick, Jason, along with these memberships, monthly or annual, to reserve court time, are we using an app? Is that going through the city's
Yeah,
Parks and Rec?
at our next council meeting, or maybe at the one after that, I want to give you guys kind of an operational update, update you on revenues and expenses over the last 2 months. There's a lot to update you on, but one of the updates I will be sharing is that we are transitioning to a different software for the sports center. We attempted with RecTrack to have a one-size-fits-all software solution for every recreational facility and program at the city. We've heard from the tennis and pickleball communities in particular that Court Reserve is the program that is used. It's actually used by every USTA club in the country. It's used by the Ponderay Pickleball Club. It's used by the clubs in Coeur d'Alene and Spokane. So Ryan has already implemented all of our court reservation and membership things into Court Reserve. We haven't activated it yet. Once we activate it, we start paying, well, it's much cheaper than RecTrack. $200 a month is the flat fee for using that software. So that's one of the updates I'll share with you at an upcoming meeting.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman Schreiber.
I was just looking to see if I missed it, but you brought up the point that if somebody signs up for an annual membership and then cancels early, there would be some sort of penalty. Is that a fee that is in this schedule, or
Well, I
could it
think the
be?
assumption is you buy out your year membership. Once you sign up for a year, you're paying for a year. And if you
Okay.
want to cancel early, you just have to pay out the rest of that year.
Okay, so there's not a fee that needs to be added to this schedule right now?
Wouldn't be a fee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let's go on to our other sports complexes. So outside of the indoor sports facility, we have the Memorial Field, and we have the sports complex. We are simplifying. The main difference here is that we're simplifying the way we charge fees. We had these very complicated and hard to understand visiting team fees, where based on the number of participants in a sport that aren't Sandpoint or Bonner County residents, you pay a higher rate, blah, blah, blah. It relied heavily on reporting. We've got TJ, our athletic director, here tonight. The reporting required to determine what fees were being paid for field use took a lot of time on both the users and the city's end from an administration standpoint. So we're keeping it very simple. If you book a field for practice, you're going to pay one rate. If you book a field for a game, you're going to pay double that, because you can't play a game without two teams. So you spread. It doesn't matter if it's a team from Kootenai County or another Bonner County team. It's 2 times the number of athletes. You're going to pay 2 times the rate. Very simple. The other big change for Memorial Field is we are going away from post facto reporting of ticket sales and asking organizers of ticketed events, not including the festival at Sandpoint, and I'll tell you why festival is not included here, to estimate the number of tickets they're going to sell at the time that they reserve the field and pay up front for that. We've got everything from very small ticketed events, less than 100, where we'd ask for, the idea was here, We're going to try to average it out to $2 per ticket across 0 to 4,000. 4,000 is maximum capacity at the Memorial Field grandstands and the visiting grandstands across the way. Standing room, if you've been to homecoming football game there are 4,000 people at the homecoming game. Okay. The goal here was to average it out across 0 to 100 paid ticket holders to around $2 per ticket. Currently, we charge $2 per ticket, but we ask organizers to report their ticket sales at the end of the season. The numbers have not been consistent over the years, even though we're certain that attendance has been fairly consistent. So this is a way to kind of ask them ahead of time, and TJ's here, he might want to comment on this, at the time that the reservation is made, to report their anticipated ticket sales ahead of time. And we have a pretty good understanding of what ticket sales are going to be, for example, high school football games, which is going to be obviously the group that's affected most by this. The reason we're not including this in the festival is that the festival, I think the mayor probably gets these emails, is incredibly detailed in their ticket sales reporting. They give us a weekly email in the events and Parks and Rec team with their ticket sales up to that week. So I received one Monday this week showing exactly how many tickets have been sold for every single concert in the series. So they can't then later on say, oh, we only sold half of what we reported. We know how many tickets are being sold for the festival. So we'll continue charging the festival the $2 per ticket rate.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman Howard.
Jason, real quick. Can you tell us then these new proposed fees, how they compare to the prior method? How much increase are we going to see here?
Like I said, the average per ticket rate comes out to the same as it is now.
Okay.
But if you're on the low end, so if you report, or if you anticipate exactly 1,501 participants at your, or ticket sales, and we're charging you $4,000 for that, you can see that's going to be more like $2.75 per ticket, right? But if you're at 4,000 tickets sold, you're really only paying $1 per ticket. So in reality, like the closer you are to the higher end range of that, you're spreading the cost out over more tickets. But we expect to see more accurate and honest reporting of anticipated ticket sales using this prior reporting as opposed to post facto.
Yep, sounds like it'd be much, much easier. But my memory serves me right. Memorial Field runs at a loss. I mean,
It does, and that's part of the reason we're going to.
So my question is, why wouldn't we raise the fees more to try and offset the?
Well, when we get to another slide, I'm going to show that we are actually raising field use fees across
Okay.
the board as well.
Okay.
So we are trying to get to closer to cost recovery. Again, going back to my presentation in May, cities don't generally run their public field and sports facilities at a cost recovery level. To an extent, like we're always going to be subsidizing sports and recreation facilities at the city of Sandpoint using our recreation dollars, which our recreation dollars and general fund dollars that go towards the maintenance of these facilities. So I have a hunch that at the end of next year, we're going to see, for example, last year we were at $95,000 of revenue at Memorial and $145,000. So we're running a $50,000 loss. I don't expect that to close from this model, but certainly narrow.
And
again, like, is that the number one priority of council? If so, we can dive into this some more, but I don't think historically that's been the highest priority of council, is to break even at all of our sports facilities.
my last question, Jason, is what prevents the organizers to estimating on the low side of ticket sales?
Well, notice that the highest range is 1,500 to 2,500 plus.
But I'm on the low end.
The organizers we're talking about here is high school football. Other events, I mean, maybe TJ can speak to it, but the other sports that go on there are going to be on like the 0 to 500 at the most.
Baseball, softball.
Yeah, 500 tickets sold for a high school baseball game. I don't think it's ever happened.
No, I
So,
agree.
if they estimate low, there's really not much lower you can go. But for high school football, we expect 1,500 to be, that higher range is what we expect.
So maybe I was misinterpreting. It's really just those two buckets, and 0 to 100.
In the fee schedule, you see that there are levels in
Intermediate
between
ones.
as well. I don't
Okay.
have them all memorized right now, but
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions about new field use fees?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
do you
Smith.
foresee having to pay back money then?
No,
Okay,
no.
that'd
That's
be
not- Yeah, we don't have that.
sure,
Yeah.
okay,
No. You mean if ticket sales are lower than they expect?
Right.
Yeah.
okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Jason, so are these fees then paid upfront?
Mhm.
And
At
were
the time of-
we were paying after the event or after the season?
No, currently they're being paid like months after the season.
Okay,
Yeah, where we're looking to collect these upfront.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we have charged for, actually, this should be increased more than 5% because we currently do charge for private use of outdoor tennis courts. That charge is going from around $3.75 per hour up to $10 per hour for most groups. Okay, this is to kind of bring those a little bit closer into line with what we charge at the James E. Russell Sports Center. We have never had an indoor sports center in the past, so we kind of are viewing our indoor and outdoor courts as complementary to each other, or maybe the opposite, substitutes for each other. So we have to bring the cost of the outdoor courts closer to what we're charging for the indoor courts. So you'll notice that this is pretty much half what we're going to be charging for indoor sports, or for indoor court use, $20 for the same groups for the indoor courts. So courts, of course, outdoors will remain free for public use. We're not looking to charge locals to use the courts. This is for a private program, like a private tennis instruction program, which we do have some of, not city-run, but private on city-owned courts. So this is something that we've always charged. We've just never put it in the fee schedule. Sarah said, well, we got to get those in the fee schedule, Jason. And we've also increased them a little bit. The shooting range has gone from $7 per visit up to $10 per visit. The rationale there was we brought the shooting range master's wage into the range that other range masters are getting paid in the region. He was getting paid, I think, $12 an hour. He's gotten a raise to 17 because no range masters in this region are getting paid $12 an hour. And this is a wonderful man who gives, 8 to 20 hours of his week to supervise over 20 volunteers at the shooting range. So just to show you this, we're putting this in the fee schedule for the first time. Okay, we'll come back to some other parks and rec fees when we get to the increases. These are new fees, so some new planning fees. I had an email from Councilwoman Duquette about the pre-application meetings today. We have historically provided a pre-application meeting. This is before a developer submits an application for whatever it is, a CUP, a short plat, a subdivision, a PUD. We get the whole planning and building and engineering team together. It's sometimes 6, 7, paid city people into a room for an hour. Sometimes it goes an hour and a half. We don't nickel and dime them. But what we've seen in the last year is that several developers have said, oh, well, they gave me an hour for free. They'll give me another hour for free. They've come back in another hour and a half, and then the third meeting. So we're now up to thousands and thousands of dollars of free consultation from city staff, just to recognize that there is a real cost to taxpayers of these additional meetings. We'll continue to provide one free pre-app meeting, but we're going to start charging the actual cost of bringing 6 staff members together for an hour for those additional meetings. We will still accept them. We're just going to invoice them for that time. So that's a new fee. Additionally, we've adjusted our notification fee. What are noticing fees? This is the cost of putting a notice in the newspaper. We have to, those are $120 or something dollars each. This also includes the cost of postage when we have to mail letters to neighbors within 300 feet of every application. Those average out to about $300 per round of noticing. In our code right now, we charge $274 for a noticing fee, no matter what the application is. If it's a simple short plat, which only requires 1 round of noticing, it pays the same as a PUD, which requires 4 rounds of noticing. So we're going to charge based on the number of rounds of noticing. So a PUD, if you get to the final development plan, includes 4 rounds of noticing. They will ultimately pay $1,200 in noticing fees, whereas a simple food truck permit might only pay that one $300 fee. Okay, again, reflecting the actual cost, getting closer to reflecting the actual.
Mr. Mayor, really quick.
Go ahead, Councilman Dick.
Jason, can you give us some sort of idea what is like the average amount of pre-application meetings?
We had 2
we're
last
having?
week, 2 a week.
2 a week per?
2 a week.
Okay.
Pre-app meetings. 2 or more a
2 or
week.
more.
I would average of 2 a week, probably.
Okay.
And so those are from everything. I mean, last week we had neither of these, I don't know when or if they're ever going to submit actual applications, a cottage development and a 21 lot subdivision. So that was, 2.5 hours of staff time in those 2 meetings. And if they want to come back now for a second meeting, we have a way to charge them, which both of those probably will come back for additional meetings.
Thank you.
And Councilman Dick, I work in 8 different jurisdictions. It's pretty typical. You get your first free and then you're paying for staff time. So ask your questions.
Okay, we've got our parking passes and our boat launch fees. We had to include them. Just to recap, these are the fees that will show up in our fee schedule. What will not show up in our fee schedule is the hourly rates that we will charge. I think, the concept is that we want to charge hourly rates that help us achieve an 85% occupancy rate. So they have to be dynamic and flexible. We also don't know exactly what technology we're going to use at this point, but these were the fees that were in the parking management plan that you approved a few weeks ago. I think Councilwoman Duquette has a
Of
question.
course.
You're recognized, Councilwoman Duquette.
Still the city taxpayers. And so I talked to Mr. Mayor today. He still says these are not set in stone. That in a year, when all the technology comes about, we can still discuss this. And if we are approving decrease or increase fees, this is a new fee. So we are not technically approving this time, correct?
Maybe I can clarify, Councilwoman Duquette, these would be the maximum fees that we would plan on
So
assessing.
you say, right?
If hypothetically our technology or the council decides, once we decide where we're going to actually assess these fees, thought it might be advisable to have something less than that. It's my understanding these would set the maximum. When you actually adopt our parking plan and parking program, you'll be going in great detail, which lots, which fees, what's the annual pass. But
Okay, I just again want that recorded, that this is not the final.
I would say this is staff's preferred fees and
Right.
the likely fees that will be presented to council when
Okay.
we come forward with our
Okay, they will
parking
be
plan.
presented again, and then I understand that I'm just one person. I would have to have some other council members approving my recommendation also. I just want to make sure this is not.
And
set in-
for clarification, this is coming back for a public
Okay.
hearing.
Right. Yeah, but you don't want to change it right then, do you?
Can I add a little?
Please.
Okay, so
Sarah Lynn's
the
finance
thing I
director.
would have to add is that if we do go below it, then we would just modify it at that time. I would say we just bring it back, and it wouldn't have to go back out for, like to be published because we're going below that, not above the 5%. So that we would just be adding to that,
Okay.
the fee schedule.
Right, thank you.
So for clarification, these fees will be on the fee schedule that comes forward for public hearing.
Yes.
Right, but they're not.
When we
What-
bring forward the parking
this-
program, there is a possibility, when the council debates and discusses that you might want to adjust those fees.
Okay.
You couldn't go higher, but you could potentially go lower, and I believe you can adjust your fees lower without a public hearing.
Okay, understood, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about these? We've talked a lot about that. Okay, on to some fee increases of greater than 5%. Going back to this was a collaboration between myself, City Planner Bill Dean, our building official, Pete Scon, city engineer. We dove into our current fees, and these had been going up by the 2.5% or 3% for years. But we asked the question, like, are these truly reflective of the amount of staff time that goes into these different permits, these different applications that we process? And in some cases, they were dramatically below the effort we know that goes into processing some of these. Now, that's not to say that this is a cost recovery price. We are just increasing it to basically provide a more proportional representation of the time and energy that goes into processing, in the first case here, a subdivision. So a subdivision that results in, or subdivision of a parcel of larger than 1 acre, that's increasing by 45%. We just know from experience that these take quite a bit more effort and staff time than smaller applications. A final plat increasing to 15 by 12%. PUDs, this is a big one. That's probably our largest increase, in addition to comp plan and rezones. You guys, we've seen some CUPs in the last year. We're in the middle of one right now. These are beasts. So we've broken the CUP out from a single $2,400 charge, no matter how far you get in the process, to two $3,500 fees. $3,500 to get through the PDP, preliminary development plan. And if you want to move forward to the final stage, it's another $3,500 because you have to replicate everything. So the whole thing goes back to a planning and zoning commission hearing and comes to city council. There's 2 more rounds of noticing. And I should point out that this is in addition to the noticing
In
fees.
addition.
The noticing fees are charged in addition to the permit processing fees. Okay, general CUP, if you looked closely at the fee schedule, you'll see that we have 2 types of CUPs. We have a food truck CUP and we have a general CUP. Conditional use permits can be things for projects as large as $100 million hotel. A food truck permit could be for a $15,000 food truck parked in the parking lot of a furniture store. So we kept food truck permits, which are dramatically easier to process. I think it's $200 or something, $300. It's in a much more reasonable range so that we don't disincentivize something that is a very well-loved amenity in our community. But CUPs are, for the general CUP application, we increased that by 143% because, well, to acknowledge the amount of effort and work that goes into processing a conditional use permit for a development. Development agreements, we had a fee in the $2,400 range. That's increased to reflect the amount of staff and legal work that goes into a development agreement. And then rezone and comp plan amendments, that's another couple of processes that were not at all accurate in our fee schedule in terms of reflecting the amount of staff effort that goes into them. So those are our increases in planning fees. Are there any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilman Schreiber.
Yeah, I just was curious. It's for lots greater than 1 acre.
Mhm.
How many lots greater than 1 acre are we seeing?
Sorry, that's for subdivisions that not create lots greater than 1 acre, but subdivision
Little
of
area.
land
Yeah,
of,
okay.
of more than 1 acre. So included in subdivisions are short plats, lot line adjustments, records of survey. These are all considered parts of that bigger subdivision umbrella. So we have in our, and I don't have them memorized again, but we have smaller scale subdivisions that require much less staff effort. So this is for those larger subdivisions.
Excellent, perfect.
Jason, question. I see the administrative cleanliness of set fees. Some jurisdictions I work in, it's a fee plus language that says actual cost of review. And maybe for Fonda or Zach, I know one local jurisdiction where the review fees can exceed $10,000 or $15,000. Is there any concern or possibility to add plus actual review time to these fees? Like 4,000 plus actual additional cost of review?
So we'd have to have a measurable, calculable ability to
Track
capture
hours.
and track hours and capture that review time.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilman Howard.
Jason, question. If I take the budget of the planning department, and then I say, look back over the last year, how many subdivisions, final plats, all of the activities that you do, with this new fee schedule, are we gonna generate enough revenue from those to cover the cost of the planning department? Will we exceed the cost of the planning department?
Absolutely not.
And if not, why not?
Again, this is another department at the city that I don't think has ever run on a cost recovery model. I mean, when you think about, we have 3 planners, we have an admin assistant, we have building official, building permit tech, building inspector, myself, the costs of running a planning department are not going to be recovered by the fees we charge developers for development. The city is to some extent, we exist as a city government to promote economic development and growth in our community, to create housing, to create jobs. So we're providing that service at taxpayer expense because these are the places our taxpayers are going to live and the places our taxpayers are going to be employed. So to place the entire burden of administering a planning department on the developers, where the benefit of our work is shared by the whole community.
I would add to that the Local Land Use Planning Act requires that you have these services available through the city. So you have opportunities for some cost recovery, but not for the entire cost recovery of the department.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just also add that I think if you broke it out just to development review, these fees get us pretty close. But as Jason mentioned, Fonda mentioned, there are many other things the planning department does, such as working on our comprehensive plan, enforcing zoning, enforcing code violations. So again, if I think if you looked at just the development review cost, this is going to get us much closer to true cost.
Yeah. Just to give you an idea, I chatted with Krista, our permit tech today, and I just wanted to get a picture of like what's in the pipeline right now for building permits. And she's like, we have about 3 dozen permits we're processing right now. So that's no, small change. That's going to generate a lot of permit revenue for the city. Meanwhile, we have 4 or 5 short plats, 2 or 3 full subdivisions, 1 or 2 CUPs. But again, like when a fee is paid, like that CUP fee was paid, let's say by the next hotel that comes to town. Over the year or 2 or 3 before the hotel's built, we're going to spend a lot more than $4,000 worth of staff time working with that developer.
Yeah.
Well, why would we be subsidizing the development? Well, because a hotel ultimately is going to bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax revenue, provide, jobs and provide places for guests to come and spend money in our town. So yeah, we're subsidizing development. Newsflash. Yep, Jack. City subsidizes development. Sorry. It's like every city in the world subsidizes development. That's what infrastructure is. We're providing the infrastructure to allow for development.
And some actually choose to make the political decision to, aggressively subsidize it by making fees zero.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, not zero, but pretty nominal.
Okay. Next in the fee increase. Let's go. Now I promise we'd return to parks. These are not dramatic. We're increasing our hourly practice rates minimally up to 15% at the outdoor fields across Memorial and Travers and Centennial. We also reviewed and increased fees for some of the services that city staff provide, trash removal, grandstands setup, for example, setting up grandstands for visiting teams. I think the fee was like $40 or something. I asked Sean, our parks guy, like how long does that take to set up and break down? And it came out to about 5 hours of staff time, 6 hours. So we reflected that in that fee. The change fee changed slightly. And then another one that TJ needs to be aware of, our athletic director, is that annual home field replacement rate. We brought that up to $12,000. It's a 16% increase. It was $10,340. Just to remind you what that is, in about 10 years from now, we expect to have to replace that turf, and we expect it to cost around $1.5 million to do that. So this is the school district's small contribution towards the eventual replacement of the turf at Memorial Field. The city is also setting aside around $65,000 a year to put towards that. So we hope to have $1.5 million 10 years from now to replace that turf. So that's the school district's contribution towards that replacement.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman.
trash removal is done by the city staff?
Yep. Well, no, sorry. The organizers are required to. It's if they leave a trash field and city staff has to do it, we put that fee in there. If the field is not left clean,
Okay.
and city staff has to do it, we can charge them for that service. Yeah.
Okay,
No, we do
there's-
not clean up the messes of the event organizers.
Okay, and if they're supposed to
You
trash,
guys clean up after yourselves? Okay, thanks.
I-
Yeah.
and I'm just wondering if recycling can be thrown in there somehow.
Do you wanna
Required.
volunteer? Yeah, well,
Mhm.
that's another conversation, but
Yeah, well, when would that be?
You
the
could,
festival does, the festival's recycling. They've got all their different separation.
I hope so, because
Yeah.
last year, Waste Management said they did not do a good job.
you could bring in your legislative powers and propose a policy or an ordinance
For the next following year.
or the field use entirely.
Thank you.
Okay, I think this is my last slide. No, this is actually, in some cases, a dramatic decrease. The community hall fees, it was so complicated. I mean, I looked at the fee schedule. It took me like 20 minutes just to understand how we bill for community hall use. And Cammie, who does all the billing for community hall use and has been doing it for 20 years, was as confused as I was. So we simplified it. We had like 3 different rooms. You could book the main room, the scout room, the blah, blah, blah room. And I asked Cammie, has anybody ever booked like one individual? No, everybody always books. Why do we have it in our fee schedule? So we simplified it. We didn't increase it. It's the same as it was for nonprofit use, but now you get the whole facility for that rate. You don't have to figure out what rooms you're going to use. The max daily rate actually went down for nonprofits, and we just doubled it for for-profit or commercial use. So if we simplified it, if you're a not-for-profit group or a nonprofit group doing a free public event, it's not to make money. On the other hand, if you want to do a concert and you're going to sell tickets and you're going to keep the revenue for those tickets, or if you're going to do a craft fair and you're going to charge admission or sell things at the facility for profit, you're going to pay double the rate. So we're just trying to simplify things here.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman
so I
Duquette?
just have a lot of little questions, sorry. There was listed beer and wine under that. I did not know we could drink in the community
Community
building.
hall is one of our parks facilities where drinking is allowed.
Really?
Well, I should say drinking is allowed with a vendor, alcohol vendor permit and a special.
Okay, so you would have to get a special permit. Okay, because like when KRFY, when we did our Christmas there was no alcohol, and I just thought it was, all
Well, they could have if they had
We
applied
could
for
have.
it and
Okay.
gotten a licensed vendor.
right.
Yeah,
thank-
you can't bring your own keg and tap it. And,
Okay, okay.
oh, last one. I think last one. Visitor mortgage, very simple. We're bringing it up to market rates. We're closer to market rates. I think this is still a screaming deal for 24 hours of mortgage at City Beach. But it is increasing about 50 to 70% across the board. And this is for that 700 dock at Windbag Marina, which we allow people to stay overnight at. You can park your boat overnight for $45, basically. And that's it. That's the end.
Just for a reference point, I just came off of a marina where it was $6 a foot per boat.
So for a 30-foot boat, you're looking at $180 a day. Yeah. Yeah, we're still a good deal.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Councilman Trevor.
while we're on the subject of City Beach, I walked past the RV park today and it was less than half full. Has there been any discussion about adjusting those rates to increase occupancy?
On next Wednesday, I'll be bringing the grant agreement for you to hopefully approve. And once we've invested $1 million in that facility, we'll definitely be revisiting RVs. That it's been, the RV park's been a mess this year. The lift station project is the project that never ends. The hotel has not been managing their waste receptacle very well. I'm not very pleased at how it's being run this year. Not how it's being run, but just the state of the RV park this year. So no, we're not going to lower those fees right now because we think a year from now it's going to have been completely rebuilt.
Okay, perfect. That's great.
Yeah, we can look at the fees we charge a year from now. And
Extenuating circumstances.
yeah, exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
I have a couple others that weren't part of your presentation. One was the short-term rentals. There's two on there that caught my eye. One was the charge to be on the wait list.
Mhm.
And that the language was a little confusing. You get charged when you're taken off of the wait list rather than put on.
Let me see.
Maybe I just read it.
Waitlist fee for placement on non-owner occupied STR. The permit fee is paid when applicant has been removed from the waitlist. That is confusing. Has been removed from the waitlist. I might have to chase down an answer to that one.
Okay.
Our assistant planner and our admin assistant manage the STR waitlist, and I know there was conversation about that language, but I don't recall what it was. We did that about 2 months ago. 3 months ago.
Okay.
So I see why that's confusing.
Yeah.
When you've been removed from the wait list. There was some reason we had to do that because people were going on and then not notifying us when they no longer wanted to be on the wait list. And there's administration and staff time that goes into contacting people on that wait list. So I think that was just a.
Is it when they come off the list and actually
Get the reservation.
Maybe that's what, yeah, I think Fonda's correct. When you're notified that you're up for a permit.
When you come off the wait list and receive your permit, then you pay for it.
Yeah.
Or you're paying for a permit at that point though, which was what, 175?
Yeah, he'll have to chase.
Yeah, I'll have to chase that one down.
Okay.
I don't have an easy answer for you right now because I see that, I mean, for me, that language is a little confusing. I'd have to review what the rationale was there.
Yeah, no worries.
Take my
And
step.
also do take a look at that less than 1 acre because that language is confusing too. It says where resulting lots are
Yeah.
less than 1 acre. So might just need a little tweak in the language. The other issue I had with that short-term rental was the penalty for a violation.
Mhm.
Seems low to me.
$100 a day.
Yeah, I think that there's probably short-term rental owners who might think that that's a reasonable cost of doing business rather than complying with our rules.
Well, that's $100 per day.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm aware. I think there are short-term rentals that might say, yeah, we can pay that. So I would propose increasing it so that it's prohibitive.
Hmm.
In fact, I've heard from the public who are aware of uh, short-term rentals in their neighborhoods operating without permits. And, perhaps that's just an issue of enforcement, but if we need to fund more enforcement for that effort, then I think that the penalty for violations is a good place to find funding for it.
So a little background, when I started a year and a half ago, I had nobody at the city at that time had any knowledge of us ever having issued a violation letter for operation of a short-term rental without a permit. We have,
We had issued violation letters for operating.
that's, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a subscription to a software called Rentalscape, which scans over 40 vacation rental websites, everything from booking.com to Expedia to Airbnb to VRBO, and then cross-references what we upload in terms of our permits. And we have right now been working on enforcement. And in fact, today in our planning team meeting, we authorized our assistant planner and admin assistant to go ahead and issue those letters, giving people 10 days to come into compliance, or they'll be fined $100 a day. That'll be the first time we will have actually issued those enforcement letters since I've been here, but we are issuing those. People will be receiving those in the next week. I'd suggest we see how people react to that. We don't know. I mean, my guess is people are going to want to avoid the $100 a day. There's not a huge incentive not to get a permit. If you're a non-owner occupied, you might not be eligible for a permit, of course, but a lot of these are owner occupied, just, ADUs or, apartments above the garage, that sort of thing. So we do want to see how this $100 works out once people start receiving those letters. We expect to see people actually submit their application for a short-term rental permit. If we then see people ignoring those letters, we'll.
And Director Welker,
Send them a citation.
I would just add that, Councilman Schreiber, this is a fairly dynamic issue right now. There have been two recent court cases, one from Lava Hot Springs and one from McCall. And I expect this to be quite fluid over the next 8 months down at the legislature and maybe to the Supreme Court. I think we just need to watch it. I like where you're going, but there are some, especially from the McCall case, there are some bright lines on what a permit and a fee and possibly a fine might allow. So I think maybe our attorneys can take a look at that.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, we will follow up on that. But I just also wanted to point out that this is a good opportunity to remember the roles and responsibilities conversation, whereas if Mr. and increase the fee without direction from all of council, that might upset the apple cart. I mean, we're going to want to, this is a good example of how we're going to want that direction from all of council before we move forward with this.
Okay, yeah, is this not the appropriate time to bring that up, though?
It certainly is, yes,
Okay,
but
so would the appropriate, should I make a motion, is what I'm asking?
No, you don't have an action item on any of these singular fees here tonight. So this is just, you're going to take an action item on setting the public hearing on the fee schedule. You might want to ask your other council members how they feel about your proposal for increasing the fee. But I would support what Mr. Mayor said with regards to short-term rental discussions across the state right now. This is probably not a time to bring a highlight to a penalty fee, given what we see going on in other cities and that we're actively monitoring right now.
Okay. Would I be overstepping my boundary to ask staff to indicate the cost of the program that they use to monitor for short-term rental violations?
I
About
don't have
5,000 now?
Cheryl here, so I don't know
I
exactly what
would say it's about 5,000.
I think it's $4,000 or $5,000. It's not cheap.
Okay.
We did consider canceling it this year, but we decided to use it instead. So we're using it. We expect it to, pay for itself through this enforcement practice that we're now doing.
Okay.
Yeah, either in fees or in compliance. What we really want is people to comply, come in and get the short-term rental permit and well, actually, the ultimate goal is to increase the available stock of housing for long-term rentals, isn't it? I mean, that's why we manage short-term rentals in Sandpoint, not necessarily to make money for the city.
Yeah, and I mean, at the very least, we want compliance with our,
Yeah.
our laws.
Councilman Schreiber, while I have you, I am looking back at the short plat or replat where resulting lots are less than 1 acre.
Mhm.
I do have, I remember now what the rationale was there. So there are actually the two areas, two things in our, I'm just going to share my screen really quick again, if you don't mind. I'm still on Zoom. Let's go. I don't need to be plugged in. Yeah, that was just for power. So. Okay, so there's two lines here. The one that appeared in my PowerPoint is this one down here. Subdivisions, or, I just covered it, subdivisions or a short plat where the resulting lot is larger than 1 acre. So all subdivisions, which is
He's got it
defined
right
as a division of land that results in more than 4 lots. So 5 lots or more is a full subdivision. All subdivisions are going to be charged $3,500, 5 lots or more. Or a short plat where the resulting lots are larger than 1 acre. There aren't many parcels like that, but one example would be for University Place Phase 4, the 14 acres on the south end of there. If there were a short plat there that split it into 3 lots that are 5 acres each, that's a very large application. That's a very large piece of land. It's warranted to charge a fee representing the scale of the development that's resulting from the short plat procedure. On the other hand, most short plats are, small lots in the city, maybe a 12,000 square foot lot that wants to split into 2 6,000 square foot lots, or combine, 2 historic lots that want to combine and make 1 larger lot. So those smaller ones are going to continue to be charged a much smaller fee, because typically who's doing short plats, these small scale short plats, it's small property owners in old neighborhoods in Sandpoint. Who's doing large short plats that result in acre large lots or larger? That's big development we're talking about.
Well, and that's really not the relevant issue. The relevant issue is how much time and
Yeah, of
what's
course.
the depth of
Yeah, the
the
amount of work that
cost.
goes into these larger short plats is significantly more than the shorter short plats, the smaller short plats, sorry.
But for example, you could have a subdivision of 100 lots that were all, a sixth of an acre,
So
and
that
that would
is-
be eligible for the lower fee,
Nope,
is that
because
right?
that is a subdivision.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's silly because as I said earlier, in state law, a subdivision is an umbrella term. There are all sorts of smaller subdivisions. But in our city code, a subdivision is defined as splitting of land that results in 5 lots or more.
Okay.
So if you're doing a full, we sometimes call it like a full subdivision versus a short plat, which is like a small subdivision.
Gotcha. Okay.
If I'm getting anything wrong here. Okay,
1 acre still seems large to me.
it is, it's large.
Right, like most lots are gonna be much smaller than that. Is there rationale why 1 acre was chosen rather than like a quarter acre or a
I'd
half
say
acre?
some recent projects and experience that we've had working on such short plats, bigger short plats. Yeah, just the amount of staff time that's gone into them.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, if you have evidence to back it up,
Yeah.
I support that. And then the last piece that I had was the rental for the radio tower. Just my question on that is, have we looked at, market rate for radio tower space recently? When was the last time that we looked at that, I guess is the question.
I have not, and I will admit that's not something that that's not part of my department, and I think you'd probably have to talk to Cheryl about that, who's not here tonight. 'Cause that's-
So it just so happens we did get a call today. I got a call
Yeah,
about
yes,
a wireless carrier who would like to talk to us about leasing part of Traverse for a tower. So I will bring that information when I get it.
Excellent. Yeah, my understanding is that we are well below market value. And so I would be interested in,
I think radio towers, because we also have the cellular tower there, I think it's a differentiation.
Yeah.
Right there.
Because down below, we have cellular and wireless broadband communications, base rent 23. Good catch, Councilman.
Oh, there you go, $23,623.
And then I lied. I do have one more.
Okay.
I brought this up last year. I just want to state my opinion on it. I noticed that the building permit fees are they're regressive. The bigger the permit, the less the fee is as a percentage of the permit. And for example, the lowest permit fee in the schedule is 5% of the total permit, whereas the highest is about 2/3 of 1%. So it's a pretty significant difference. And if we want to encourage infill development, I think we should consider at least leveling the play field on that. And obviously, there's going to be some fixed costs with every permit. So whether you're doing a really big building or a smaller building, somebody has to go and inspect that. But I think the disparity there is pretty big, and I think we should address that.
So there were several types of building permits and plan check reviews. I'm looking at ones that go from $0 to $2,000 in value to $1 million and over, where it goes from $66 up to almost 7,000. It's my understanding that some of that comes from IBC. They have a valuation and permit fee. But Jason, have you ever seen Pete pull off of that for the fee calculation?
When we reviewed these, he didn't
Comment on that? Okay.
have any suggestions to changing them beyond just the inflation. So I'd have to ask Pete what the standard practice is in the industry for building permit fees.
And Councilman Schreiber, I just emphasize that there's a distinction between a tax and a fee. And for fees, you have to have a defensible, justifiable cost recovery for the time and effort put in. So we are somewhat limited. We can't just, target a bigger house because it's bigger if it's not more time intensive or something like that.
Well,
So-
the other thing about the building permit fees is, a building permit could be required for the smallest of projects. You want to do it, do a awning over your front porch, you need a building permit. That could be a $2,000 project. So really, like, when you think about housing, it's the difference between a house valued at less than $500,000 or a house valued at more than $500,000. So in Sandpoint, at least. So it's not all these different levels that you see when you talk about construction of new homes, because most of these would apply to remodels, small, deck type permits or new roof permit.
That's a good point. And in fact, perhaps that means that we should create a new tier above $1 million, because there are certainly projects that are much larger than $1 million, which would make it even much more regressive beyond that.
So just for council action on something like this, I think you're aware, but if you wanted to move that direction, and I'm not saying it's a good or bad idea, you would have time between now and August 20th to maybe get with Pete, get with Jason, and then potentially prepare a motion to amend the fee schedule at that August 20th.
I would recommend you email Pete, CC me, ask
Okay.
him what industry practices, because is there a reason we couldn't do a percentage of the work being done and charge a fee based on percentage based as opposed to a flat rate? Because you're right, that is with a flat rate like this, the higher the valuation, the less percentage it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to be more representative, you could either have a progressive percentage or a flat percentage.
Or yeah, if there's some sort of fixed cost associated with every fee. So it's like, well, we have X amount of staff time plus the building permit or building inspector has to go out. So like the bare minimum is 50, but then above that, it's a percentage of the product cost, something like that. But I'm interested to hear what your team has to say about it.
Yeah, Pete would be the person to ask about that.
Perfect.
PSCOM at sandpointidaho.gov.
Will do.
Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Council members have any additional questions about the fees?
I do have, Mr. Mayor, I do have questions on fees, but are you doing the whole?
No.
You're just, so
just the
somebody else is
PPD,
gonna
yeah.
cover some. And so if I didn't see something on here, that means it's not increased or decreased.
Yeah, my PowerPoint only included new fees and fees that were
Okay.
increasing more than 5%.
Okay, so my question, talking about violations, violations for dark sky ordinance is not enough to make people change their lights. I have a neighbor who has spoken to the city several times. I've told you about her. She's talked to the police department or the resource officer at Tennyson. And she has said she has sent violations to this business, but it seems like the fee is not enough to make them do what they're supposed to, according to Dark Skies. So I just wonder where that is. If it's not on here, is it something?
I'm not seeing, Councilwoman,
I
I'm
haven't
not seeing
seen
a
it.
dark sky violation, I assume, and
There is.
legal can, you see one in there?
No, not on this chart.
No. I
Oh.
assume we would address that through our legal team and encourage or take other actions to direct enforcement and action of a typical zoning code violation, potentially even judicial something.
So I know there's a price put on it, and I can't remember what it is, but it's obviously not enough to make this business change their light that.
It's not in our
lights
fee
right in their
schedule
dark.
currently.
No, and that's why I wonder where would it be? How
It-
would that be?
It'd be a general violation of our zoning code that we,
And so is that in here anywhere?
The fee scale, that's different.
so violation versus fee.
Okay,
So a violation could be court order or a preliminary injunction
okay.
or a cease and desist or whatever action we decided to take.
Misdemeanor, maybe?
That penalty needs to be baked into the ordinance, and yes, it could be.
Could be a misdemeanor if it's in the ordinance.
I can, my defense attorney brain thinks of some issues with that, but that's a conversation.
And so where would you find that? Where would I figure out how to see that that's not enough of a fine? It's a fine.
We can help you work through your legislative powers to understand how you could change that.
Okay, put that on my list to talk to you about.
Yep. Council members have any other questions about any fees at all?
About any fees?
Yep.
Okay, should I just ask, I have little questions because I don't understand all of this. And I didn't have time to get help with everybody because you guys were gone last week and I was gone this week. So just like sign permits. Sign permits.
What's your question about sign permit?
I guess banners, where do people put banners? What is the,
We have a proposed $299 fee for sign permit special banners.
right, and where do people, what kind of banners?
Super One, when they're 12-hour sale,
Oh,
things like that.
Okay, that kind of, okay, all right. Let me see, what else was there? Firewatch, what is Firewatch?
Chief?
To make sure it doesn't rekindle.
A little exercise, blood flow.
Yeah. So slide that back. If a business has something or multifamily units, we've done it, there's a hotel downtown that we've done it with. If their alarm system has to be taken out of service, because it's malfunctioning, then we place them on a 24-hour fire watch. If they are not able to perform the fire watch, then we charge them a fee. We do it, but we charge them a fee to do that.
Okay. And when do you find out if their fire alarms don't work? When you go check them?
Well, they're constantly being inspected throughout the year, so they get an annual one, or if they're somewhere where their sprinklers out and they are put on a fire watch because it has to do with the safety of the occupants in the building.
Okay,
Okay.
Chief, would that also apply to an occupancy exceedance? If there is a room or an event space where people wanted to exceed the occupancy limit? No.
No, that's, that if they want to exceed that, then we cut it off and they can't.
Okay.
Yeah, until they get the number down, so. Yep,
thank you.
yep, no problem.
And special events,
Mhm.
who's in charge of special events?
Probably between Melissa, myself, and
Just the increase in that for $40 for less than 51 participants. I'm wondering what more. Okay, so I know neighborhoods that do block parties.
Mhm.
And in the past, we have not had to pay because we have less than 51 people. I'm just wondering, the next fee up is over 51. Is that $50? What is that fee? Same, $40?
It
Okay.
looks like 51 to 499 participants is going up to $117.
Okay. So I guess I'm just, okay. I just wonder why we have to pay it.
There's actually, you'd be surprised, there's a fair amount of administrative work that goes into even a block
They
party.
put 2 signs up. And they're nothing fancy or special. Just
It
block
may
it.
appear that way, but there's actually, the processing of the application. They have to actually read the application, see what they're trying to do, determine if a traffic plan is needed. So there is some staff time.
There's these are simple. These are, I'm
Sometimes-
sorry. Okay, because like we do an alley party, there's like nothing. For $40 just seems like a lot to,
Yeah,
Okay.
we,
okay.
we, every minute of staff time cost.
Yeah, it takes us a lot of time to fill out the application.
You should charge an event fee.
Okay, I think that was all. I appreciate your time, everybody, while I get my brain understanding all about the fees. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to schedule a public hearing for August 20th, 2025. Public testimony regarding proposed new fees and existing fees proposed to increase by more than 5%.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Rule, second by Dick. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Duquette,
Yes.
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Schreiber.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Ask for a brief.
We are going to take a 5-minute recess, 7:46. Being reconvened at 7:53. Next, council will consider approval of a proposed fiscal year 2026 revenues and expenditures, declare intent to use foregone levying authority, and schedule the budget public hearing. At this time, I will yield the floor to Finance Director Sarah Lenz.
Good evening. I have a short presentation tonight before you guys. I want to just go quickly through the budget dates. We've done the July 9th, which is the capital improvement project workshop, the department and divisions, with a follow-up the next meeting with the more department and divisions and the citywide revenues. Tonight is, I'm going to be presenting on fund balance and net position and one-time dollars. And then obviously we just talked about the tentative approve of the maximum revenue and expenditures and schedule public hearing date. August 6th will be a additional discussion with council directive changes to the budget. And then also last but not least, the public hearing with the adoption of the budget ordinance. I wanted to show this tonight because I think this is super important because the discussion of one-time money has come up, the discussion of just why we're spending beginning cash and all that stuff. So, and we haven't gone over this in quite a while. So I wanted to back up and talk about the financial statements at the end of the year that we get. Always list out all of our fund balances. And so I just combined them all into here, but I also put on here where you can find them in the financial statements. So if you need to go back to them and look at them. So what a fund balance and a net position is. I'll start with the fund balance, and the general fund or any governmental fund is called fund balance. And how you can, simple terms, you can think of that as like you have assets, cash. Cash is the easiest one to think of. And then liabilities, if you owe any bills. So that's going to be your liability. So you take your assets minus your liabilities equals your fund balance. That's going to be your money, your basic, your leftover fund balance that you can use for future type things. Within that fund balances, there are designated pots of money within that fund balance. And we'll get into that later. But these are just the high level fund balances over the years for the different funds that we have. I just wanted to note the quick one that stands out in here is going to be the Park Improvement Fund. This was the JER donation, and it's easy to see how when we got it and how we didn't spend it for a couple of years. So you can really see that one standing out here. I'm going to start with the water fund. The net position in that
You can see here back in 22, so you have the capital improvement is going to be our, is part of our net position. And that is basically used for our capital improvements projects. And we also have the watershed protection. And then we also have debt and other, and then unrestricted. In 2022, I reevaluated and actually proposed to council to move part of our unrestricted down into capital improvements because the balance of that was getting rather large. And what that is caused from, we'll go over that of the revenues over expenses. And so that's evaluated every year of moving those monies around and is done on an annual basis. The water fund, so this is going into what causes that balance to grow or shrink. So you have your revenues, which is your first line there, your blue, and then your purple is going to be your expenditures. Every year that your revenues are above your expenditures, you're going to be growing that balance, and anytime flip-flop, the opposite. So in 22, you can see here, we spent more money than we had in revenues, and that was planned, that was beginning cash that was used. So I'm going to go back over here, and you can kind of see where you had that 21 balance of $15 million, and then 22, it went down to 14.7. So it kind of is, it's not 100% follows each other. It's not a 1-for-1 because sometimes you have more bills at the end of the year of your liabilities. So that does affect that fund balance or net position in water fund. And sewer and wastewater fund, the net position, we knew we were going to be doing this treatment plant. So we have been saving for this treatment plant for many, many years. Well before my time, we've been saving in the capital improvements to be able to do this. Part of that is because when we go out for bond, we have to have an actual balance in our net position to be able to get a good rating. We want to get the highest rating we can with the bond agencies, a AAA, a AA, single A, and a lot of that depends on what the cash balance you have sitting out there and how many basically days on hand that you have cash available. So we are in a very good position right now when we are ready to go out and do that. And I wanted to show here, you can see where our rates, our newly adopted rates back in 22, you can see where they took effect here. We were expecting to have those and actually be paying on that loan right away in 23. We're still in process of doing that. So you can see here where we're actually growing our fund balance at a higher rate than our revenue or expenditures are. Soon, once we go out and we actually get a bond, then we will be, it'll be much more in line. Now the general fund, this one is a lot, in my opinion, more complicated because there's a lot more buckets of money and things going on within the general fund. In the general fund, we have what we call assigned, committed, and restricted different fund balances, as well as unassigned. You can see the balances here, and we'll get into those in a little bit more of what causes these, and then also what is one-time money. So here is our financial policies and guidelines. These were initially created back in 2018, right before Shannon retired, and they have been amended several times since then. This is basically goes through why we have this policy, what designates these different fund balances. I'm not going to read it word for word, but it is in our budget book, in the financial policies tab in there that has all of the details in here. The one I did want to go over is that we do have restricted fund balance. Again, this goes back to the slide before of the different pots of money that we have up. Restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned fund balance. That unassigned fund balance is the one that is the available to be able to use for one-time money for projects in the following years, year or years in the future. The other ones, I'm going to, on the next slide, show you the unassigned fund balance and what that is made of. So the assigned fund balance is we have per our policy, we have a construction reserve, an emergency reserve, operation reserve, and then other. Those are all defined in that policy. I'm not going to read it, but the construction reserve is a unique one that is really just for the downtown Sura projects that we have that we'll be finishing up. So per that policy, we were to increase it to $4 million back in 22. We did not have the money per se to do it. So I just did this last year. Once we do that project and then Sura has paid us back for that, then this can be released and used for one-time things. Here you can see the same thing, revenues and expenditures. Again, you can see that every year we've had revenue transfers or revenue and expenditures. Our revenues have outpaced our expenditures, which is a good thing. So that revenue outpacing our expenditures is creating that balance that you're seeing that has been increasing. Now, per our policy, we also have what we can use for these one-time resources and what causes these things. And I highlighted two of these on here because this is what's causing our increases. One is a result from one-time spike in revenue, and then two is a result from budget surplus derived from temporary expenditure savings. And it dictates in this policy what we can use these for. We can use them for, down at the very bottom, find my place on there. Appropriate uses for one-time resources include establishing and rebuilding emergency reserves, operating reserves, early retirement of debt, capital expenditures, and other non-reoccurring expenditures. Emphasis shall be placed on one-time uses that achieve future operating cost reductions. And again, there's more detail when you read through the whole entire policy. I wanted to point out the revenue. This is an easy one to see of what's happened, why our revenue has been over our budgeted amount. So investment earnings over the last 2 years have been phenomenal in pretty much across the board. If you have anything in any type of an account, you know that you're earning a lot of interest right now. That will not, obviously that's cynical, it will not continue on. So what we budget for at the city is at the rate that we would expect in the past. In other words, so the activity in 21 and 22, that is normal rates. And that's the rates that we've normally had for the past 20, 30 years and those things. So that's what we budgeted at. However, if you can see in the activity of 23 and 24 and year to date today, it is way higher than that. So that is an example of why we are, especially in the general fund, why we have seen those balances substantially over what we actually budgeted. Every year I keep thinking they're going to go down and they haven't yet. So, which is not a bad thing, not a bad thing. But this was causing that when you hear someone saying we've never spent so much money on this, well, or been able to have the money to spend on, this is one of the reasons why. And I wanted just to show you too that even these investment earnings, they are basically, we book them back to where they're coming from. So that fourth line down, for example, the water capital improvement, that's the water capital improvement line balance that you see. So those interest earnings are actually going back into that account. And then that really rolls into the beginning cash that we budget that so basically all those, the net position and the fund balances rolls into that beginning cash available for that budget. So you can see here the different beginning cashes, and I will just point out the general fund at the very bottom there. So the last audit we had was at the end of 24. That's the finalized audit. Now we have in our budget for 25, 1.9 million of beginning cash to use in this fiscal year. And in the budget that's presented to you guys, we have 2.6 million of beginning cash. Again, that's one-time type projects. So that was the quick. If you have any questions, then you go back in slides. I know it's a lot of information, but I thought this is super important to show you kind of how it relates to the beginning cash of what we're putting in the budget, and then the restrictions per the policy that council has adopted and whatnot. So.
Thank you very much, Sarah. While you're there, could you pull up the interactive budgeting book on your screen? Is that easy? I just wanted to point out to the council, if they're not aware, I know one of you, I think I met with, wasn't aware of some of this. You could pull up the executive summary and then the short-term organizational factors. So in the interactive budget book, Obviously, the executive summary is my introduction to you all. I think you may be aware of that, but some new things we did this year. There's the strategic plan, but this short-term organizational factor and the long-range operational plan, those, I think, if you're not aware, kind of, if you scroll through that, you'll see this is sort of what's in my head based on our strategic plan and what I see us facing. I just encourage council to read those two sections because that will really give you, I know I'm not a great communicator and I assume that this document would be communicating this to you, but this is where sort of the vision for the year lies in terms of what I've presented to you.
And I will point out too that the financial policies that we were just going on are actually in this tab here underneath the introduction. It has a link to the full financial policies, and then in here is just the fund balance and reserve policies. So
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead,
could you go
Councilman.
back
Yeah.
to what you were talking about?
Yeah.
To read.
Yep. And
Okay.
there you go.
executive
Under executive summary, yeah, if you expand that. And Sarah is, can you open a new tab and just show them how to get to that interactive book if they're not aware, if the public's watching?
Okay, I found this on the
Not
web.
Siri.
Can you open it?
That was
We could
Sarah,
use his
not
help.
Siri.
actually on our website. So if you go to our website underneath departments and then finance and then financial transparency. The very first thing on here is the proposed budget book. And that's where you can get to this, the budget book itself. And also it's in a link in all the staff reports as well.
Yeah, so that executive summary, that's the majority of the work I personally put into this with Sarah's assistance and the other directors. So this is sort of where I see us. If there's any feedback or comments, we can go from there. But any questions for Sarah on fund balance and what the presentation she just provided?
If you need to meet and one-on-one to go through this, there's a lot of moving parts. So I'm very willing and happy to sit down and explain all the behind the scenes boring stuff.
So just so everyone's clear, we're setting the maximum budget tonight, revenues and expenditures, and declare intent to use foregone and setting a public hearing for August 20th. If there's no other questions from council, I would entertain a motion for tentative approval of the proposed fiscal year 2026 revenues, expenditures, and declare intent to use foregone levying authority to schedule a public hearing for August 20th, 2025.
Mr. Mayor, real quick, question.
Go ahead.
For
Councilman
you or Sarah, can you tell us from where we were last time to where we are here, the funding for Spot Bus?
Yes. Thanks for your feedback, Councilman Dick. There is revenue, not one time because it is a multi-year lease from one of the city properties that could potentially fill that funding gap for Spot. Sarah and I have talked about it, and I'll let her take it from there if there's anything you want to add.
So I think with legal's, I guess the direction too is I think that's next time would be the time when you guys all vote. And if you guys want to move that, then I would suggest where to move it from.
Gotcha.
But we have identified a reoccurring revenue source that could fill that spot funding gap.
And we'd be talking $150,000.
I think
where we were.
let's try, Councilman Dick. I think the request was 145. I think that's a council decision. So
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So that's the vote next.
yes, to amend the budget
Okay.
at the hearing or amend.
Move around money.
Move around.
Yeah. And any other thing that wants to be moved, discussed.
Adjusted.
So all we're doing with this is setting
Setting the date for the maximum
okay.
top line.
Yes.
So I would entertain a motion for tentative approval of the proposed fiscal year 2026 revenues and expenditures and declare intent to use foregone levying authority and schedule a budget public hearing for August 20th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dick, second by Howarth. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Schreiber,
Yes.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Duquette.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. For the final item on the agenda, I will entertain a motion to convene an executive session pursuant to Idaho Code Section 74-206-1B and D to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent, and to consider records that are exempt from disclosure provided by Chapter 1, Title 74 of Idaho Code.
So moved.
Moved by Shriver, second by Rule, I think. This will be a roll call vote.
Counselor Rule,
Yes.
Counselor Duquette,
Yes.
Counselor Howard,
Yes.
Counselor Dick,
Yes.
Counselor Schreiber.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I would ask everyone not participating in the executive session to please exit the room, and the meeting recording will now end. Good night, and thank you for everyone